Blood-red lightning split Salem's October sky as Professor Marcus Rivera's Tesla exploded in the Hawthorne Hotel parking lot. He dove behind a colonial headstone, clutching his breakthrough research on quantum gravitational anomalies during celestial events. Tomorrow's blood moon eclipse would prove his theory or kill him, trying to stop what he'd accidentally unleashed. Jesus Christ, Marcus gasped, watching his car melt like wax under impossible crimson fire. His quantum field generator had malfunctioned during calibration, tearing a hole between dimensions right in the heart of witch trial territory. 300 years of accumulated supernatural energy was bleeding through, and Salem's tourist-friendly ghosts were about to become humanity's extinction event. Emergency sirens wailed across Salem as windows shattered in perfect geometric patterns. Marcus's equipment readings showed reality literally unraveling, gravitational fields reversing, electromagnetic storms, temperature fluctuations that violated every law of physics. The boundary between dimensions was collapsing, and something vast and hungry pressed against the weakening barriers. His phone buzzed with frantic texts from his daughter Emma in Boston. "Dad, I'm seeing things that aren't there. Shadows moving wrong. What's happening?" The 16-year-old had inherited more than his scientific mind. She'd gotten her great-grandmother's supernatural sensitivity, dormant until tonight's catastrophic awakening of Salem's deepest secrets. Martha Corey materialized from the smoke like an avenging angel, her housekeeping uniform replaced by colonial lyra robes covered in astronomical symbols. "Your science just rang the dinner bell for every demon imprisoned under Salem's soil," she snarled, ancient power crackling around her weathered hands. 3 centuries, we've kept them sleeping. One night, you've undone everything." The air itself began bleeding, literally dripping crimson droplets that hissed when they hit the ground. Marcus's instrument screamed with readings that shouldn't exist, as reality warped around the dimensional tier. Tourists fled screaming as gargoyles peeled themselves off colonial buildings and dead witch trial victims clawed up from their graves, animated by the chaos. "I didn't know," Marcus protested, watching his life's work transform Salem into a supernatural battlefield. The quantum calculations were theoretical. The field generator was supposed to measure dark matter fluctuations, not open portals to hell. His scientific worldview crumbled as mathematical precision birthed literal monsters from humanity's darkest nightmares. Martha grabbed his arm with grip that could crush steel. "Knowing doesn't matter now. Your daughter's bloodline makes her a beacon for what's coming through. They'll hunt her across dimensions to use her as an anchor in our world. We have 6 hours until the blood moon peaks and the barriers collapse permanently. Fix this, or watch civilization burn." The witch house erupted in flames that burned backward, pulling light into darkness instead of creating it. Ancient entities pressed against the dimensional membrane, their forms visible through the tiers as living geometric nightmares that hurt to perceive directly. Marcus's quantum field generator had given them exactly what they needed: scientific precision to stabilize their manifestation. "Emma's at MIT working late on her physics thesis," Marcus said, horror dawning as he realized the connection. "She's been having dreams about Salem for months, drawing equations she doesn't understand. Oh God, she's been unconsciously calculating the resonance frequencies. The entities have been preparing her to complete their summoning ritual." Downtown Salem transformed into a war zone as reality warped under supernatural assault. Cars levitated before exploding mid-air. Streetlights bent into impossible spirals, and the very ground rippled like water. Martha's protective charms held back the worst effects, but even her centuries of accumulated power couldn't contain the dimensional breach for long. "The original Guardians left emergency protocols," Martha explained, producing a leather-bound tome that seemed to contain more pages than physically possible. "But the calculations require quantum-level precision combined with blood sacrifice from the Guardian bloodline. Your daughter must willingly anchor the sealing ritual, knowing it might kill her." Single quotes. Marcus's phone rang. Emma, her voice distorted by static that sounded like screaming. "Dad, something's wrong with reality here. The equations on my whiteboard are moving, rearranging themselves into patterns that make my eyes bleed. I can see through walls, and there are things crawling in the spaces between atoms. Help me. The connection died as electromagnetic interference from the dimensional tier overloaded cell towers across New England. Marcus watched his readings spike beyond measurement as entities began manifesting physically, their presence causing localized reality collapse. Time was running out, and Boston was 90 minutes away through increasingly supernatural terrain that obeyed no earthly laws. We can't drive through this chaos, Marcus realized, watching Interstate 95 fold in half like origami. The dimensional distortions are spreading faster than we can travel. Emma's trapped in Boston while hell opens up in Salem, and I'm the only one who understands the quantum mechanics behind this nightmare I've created. Martha smiled grimly, her form beginning to glow with accumulated power passed down through 13 generations of guardian witches. Who said anything about driving? Salem's ley lines connect to every major city on the eastern seaboard. Your quantum field generator didn't just open one portal, it activated the entire continental grid our ancestors built to protect America. The revelation hit Marcus like lightning. Salem wasn't just the site of witch trials, it was the central hub of a continental protection network built by refugees from European witch hunts. His experiment had activated dormant magical infrastructure, creating a supernatural internet connecting every major American city through underground ley line networks established centuries ago. The Boston terminus is in MIT's basement, hidden beneath the physics building where Emma's working, Martha continued. But traveling the ley lines requires surrendering your rationalist worldview completely. One moment of scientific skepticism in the ethereal realm, and you'll be torn apart by the contradictions. Can you accept magic as fundamental reality? Marcus looked at his destroyed instruments, at Salem burning with impossible fire, at reality itself unraveling around them. I've spent 20 years proving the universe operates on mathematical principles. Tonight, those same principles are trying to end human civilization. If magic can save my daughter, then I'll believe in whatever keeps her alive. Martha began chanting in languages that predated human civilization, while drawing geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. The symbols glowed with power that made Marcus's skin crawl, but his quantum sensors registered energy patterns that matched his theoretical models for dark matter interaction. Magic and science were different languages, describing the same cosmic forces. The ground beneath their feet became translucent, revealing vast networks of energy flowing through crystalline channels carved deep into bedrock. Marcus understood with terrible clarity that his quantum field generator had resonated with this ancient infrastructure, amplifying magical forces through scientific precision until the boundaries between dimensions couldn't contain the accumulated power. The ley lines are like fiber optic cables for supernatural energy, he whispered, scientific understanding merging with mystical revelation. The Guardians created a continental defense grid powered by ley line intersections at major population centers. My quantum field turned Salem into a supernatural broadcast station, sending awakening signals to every sleeping entity in North America. Martha nodded, her chanting reaching crescendo as the ethereal pathway opened beneath them. And now those entities are converging on Boston to claim your daughter as their permanent anchor in physical reality. Emma's bloodline makes her the perfect conduit, powerful enough to maintain their manifestation indefinitely, vulnerable enough to be controlled through terror and isolation. They plunged into the ley line network, reality dissolving around them as they traveled through dimensions where physics bent to accommodate forces that scientific instruments couldn't measure. Marcus felt his rational mind stretching to accommodate impossible geometries in non-Euclidean spaces, where cause preceded effect and time flowed in spirals instead of straight lines. The journey through ethereal space lasted eternities and split seconds simultaneously. Marcus experienced every moment of Salem's history, the real witch trials, where guardians died protecting dimensional barriers, the entity's first attempts at manifestation, Centuries of careful containment that his single experiment had shattered in minutes. Knowledge burned through him like acid, restructuring his understanding of reality's true nature. They emerged in MIT's sub-basement, a hidden chamber beneath the physics building, where Emma stood paralyzed before a massive equation that covered every wall in symbols that shifted between mathematical notation and mystical runes. Her eyes bled from staring at calculations that described the mathematics of reality manipulation, cosmic forces that human minds weren't designed to comprehend. Emma. Marcus rushed to his daughter, but she didn't respond. Her consciousness had been pulled into the equation itself, her mind serving as a living computer, calculating the precise frequencies needed to complete the entity's manifestation. The supernatural forces were using her scientific training against her, turning rational thought into a weapon for irrational destruction. Martha examined the wall equations with growing horror. She's been calculating for hours, unconsciously solving problems that took our ancestors decades to understand. The entities have been feeding her knowledge through dreams, preparing her to complete their summoning ritual during the blood moon eclipse. We have less than 2 hours to break her free. The basement walls began bleeding that same crimson liquid Marcus had seen in Salem, reality growing thin as the entities pressed closer to complete manifestation. Emma's calculations were approaching completion, each solved equation bringing cosmic horrors closer to permanent residence in the physical world. Her brilliance had become humanity's potential death sentence. The only way to stop this is to give her a more complex problem, Marcus realized, his scientific training finally proving useful in supernatural crises. If we can present equations that require more processing power than the summoning calculations, her mind will automatically prioritize the greater mathematical challenge. But what problem is more complex than dimensional manipulation? Martha smiled with desperate hope. The guardian protocols your great-grandmother died protecting. The equations for sealing dimensional breaches permanently require calculations that would burn out quantum computers. If Emma can solve them while maintaining conscious control, she can close every portal the entities opened and reinforce the barriers for another 3 centuries. Marcus began writing new equations on the blood-covered walls, combining his quantum mechanics expertise with Martha's mystical knowledge to create hybrid mathematical expressions that bridged science and magic. The formulas described reality manipulation on scales that required both rational analysis and intuitive understanding of forces beyond conventional physics. Emma's bleeding eyes suddenly focused on the new equations with laser intensity. Her mind, trapped in mathematical trance, immediately began processing the more complex problem. The summoning calculations stalled as her consciousness redirected toward the sealing protocols, her brilliant analytical abilities becoming humanity's salvation instead of its destruction. The entities roared with fury as their carefully prepared summoning ritual collapsed. Dimensional tiers throughout New England began contracting as Emma's calculations reversed the manifestation process. But the strain on her mind was enormous. Blood poured from her nose and ears as human consciousness struggled to contain mathematical concepts meant for cosmic intelligences. "She's dying," Marcus whispered, watching his daughter's body convulse as inhuman knowledge burned through her neural pathways. The sealing calculations are too complex for human minds to process safely. We need to find another way before the mathematical overload kills her and leaves the portals open permanently. Martha grabbed Marcus's hands, her ancient power flowing into him with painful intensity. Guardian magic requires willing sacrifice from bloodline descendants. I can channel my accumulated power through you to help Emma process the calculations safely. But once I transfer my abilities, I'll age rapidly and die within minutes. The choice is yours, my life for your daughters. Marcus looked at Emma, convulsing in mathematical agony, at the dimensional tiers spreading across the basement walls, at reality itself hanging by threads that only she could repair. "Do it," he said without hesitation. "Transfer everything to me. I'll help her carry the mathematical burden while you guide the ritual from beyond. My daughter lives, whatever the cost." Power flowed from Martha into Marcus like lightning. Centuries of accumulated magical knowledge burning through his nervous system as his consciousness expanded to accommodate forces beyond scientific understanding. He felt Martha aging rapidly beside him, her life essence transforming into raw energy that would help Emma survive the ceiling calculations. With Martha's power coursing through him, Marcus could perceive the mathematical structures underlying reality itself. The equations Emma was solving described the fundamental forces that held dimensions apart. Cosmic architecture that required both scientific precision and mystical intuition to manipulate safely. Together, they could repair the damage his experiment had caused. Father and daughter merged consciousness across mathematical dimensions, their combined minds processing equations that rewrote the laws of physics in real time. The ceiling calculations blazed across the basement walls in symbols that shifted between quantum mechanics, notation, and ancient runic alphabets, bridging science and magic in patterns that healed reality's wounds. The dimensional tiers began sealing with sounds like cosmic thunder. Entities howled as they were pulled back into ethereal prisons, their forms dissolving as the mathematical foundations of their manifestation collapsed. Throughout New England, supernatural chaos ended as the Guardian protocols restored barriers that had protected humanity for 3 centuries. Emma collapsed as the final equation completed itself. The sealing ritual finished and the dimensional breaches permanently closed. Marcus caught her as she fell, his enhanced senses confirming that she'd survived the ordeal with no permanent damage. Martha's sacrifice had saved them both, her centuries of accumulated wisdom enabling them to repair reality's fabric. Salem's fires extinguished themselves as supernatural energy dissipated back into dormant ley lines. The tourist town returned to normal, though careful observers might notice that shadows now fell at more protective angles, and the air itself felt somehow safer. The Guardian network had been restored, stronger than ever after its mathematical upgrade. Marcus destroyed his quantum field generator's remaining components, ensuring that no future scientist could accidentally repeat his mistake. The research that had nearly ended civilization became classified knowledge passed down through Guardian bloodlines. Scientific advancement balanced against supernatural responsibility in ways his professors had never taught him. Emma woke in the hospital 3 days later, with no memory of the mathematical trance, but complete retention of the Guardian knowledge she'd processed. Her physics thesis now incorporated concepts that wouldn't be discovered by mainstream science for decades, though she carefully disguised their supernatural origins as theoretical speculation. The next blood moon eclipse passed without incident. Salem's restored protections, holding firm against entities that pressed futilely against reinforced dimensional barriers. Marcus and Emma worked together to establish new protocols, combining scientific monitoring with magical defenses, creating early warning systems for future supernatural threats. Years later, Marcus published papers on quantum gravitational anomalies during celestial events, carefully omitting the supernatural elements that made his discoveries possible. His colleagues praised his innovative theoretical frameworks, never suspecting that their practical applications extended far beyond conventional physics into realms where mathematics and magic merged. Emma completed her PhD in theoretical physics while secretly training with other Guardian descendants scattered across academia. The network of protectors had evolved, incorporating modern technology with ancient wisdom to create defenses that could handle 21st century supernatural threats, using tools that bridged both scientific and mystical traditions. The Guardian protocols required constant updating as human technology advanced and entity strategies adapted. Marcus and Emma lead research teams that developed hybrid approaches to dimensional security, ensuring that future accidents wouldn't repeat Salem's near catastrophe. Science and magic worked better together than either tradition alone could achieve. Salem's tourism industry never learned how close their ghost stories had come to becoming horrific reality. The town's supernatural reputation continued, attracting visitors who sought harmless thrills. never suspecting that real guardians worked in shadows to maintain the delicate balance between entertainment and existential threat to human civilization. On quiet nights, Marcus would stand in Salem's cemetery, where Martha Corey's headstone bore fresh flowers from grateful descendants who understood her sacrifice. The normalcy was precious, maintained by guardians who chose responsibility over recognition, protecting a world that remained safely ignorant of the battles fought to preserve reality's stability. The Salem equation had been solved, its variables balanced through willing sacrifice and inherited wisdom. The next generation of guardians would face different challenges as human. Advancement opened new possibilities for both progress and catastrophe, but the mathematical foundations of protection remained strong, inscribed in quantum mechanics and defended by those who understood that some knowledge required both scientific precision and mystical wisdom to wield safely.